It is the little things that really help to elevate a game from being merely good to being truly great. Respawn Entertainment have got a bit of history here, and they're obviously aiming to get Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order to drop into the latter category as well upon its release on the 15th of November. Having been able to spend a few hours playing the game last week, we can see some of the ways that they're really adding nuance to the game. So here are 7 details that are helping to make Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order something a little bit special. Number 1. Active Blaster Deflection. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think this one's been done before. Active parrying that knocks enemies back in melee has featured in previous Star Wars games, but Jedi Fallen Order also makes it apply when fending off incoming blaster fire as well. Holding the block button will simply see incoming blaster bolts spraying off any which way, but if you instead time a tap of the block button just as a shot gets close, Cal would instead direct it straight back at the enemy. It's something that just feels right. There's no digging into the skill tree and upgrading a laser parry ability which then just automatically does it for you. It's purely based off timing that is as loose or as tight as you want it to be, depending on the difficulty level that you've chosen. And that leads quite neatly into number 2. The Lightsaber Slays regardless of the difficulty. How do you make an action game more difficult? Well, you could give your enemies more damage and bigger health bars, right? Wrong. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order doesn't really fiddle with the health bars. Respawn's mantra is that the basic Stormtrooper dies in one hit. There's slight exceptions to that rule, as you have to break the guard to be able to deal damage to the actual health bars of the troopers, and if you're going up against the troopers with the electrified Z6 batons, that can be a bit of a thing to get past. But it's a much bigger deal when you come up against tougher enemies like droids, bosses, automatons, that kind of thing. But a much bigger part of the difficulty jump is going to be the reduced window for reactions and timings, that enemies might be able to be more aggressive when they attack you and could do so in greater numbers. Other Souls-like developers should pay attention, because this is how you would go about making a Dark Souls easy mode. Number 3. It's Dark Souls when you want it to be. So yeah, there's more than a few hints of Dark Souls in the game's inspirations, from the aforementioned combat, through the open world to the boss battles, and even the way that the world resets and refills with enemies when you rest. No, it doesn't make a huge amount of sense narratively, but when Cal kneels down at a meditation point around the world and rests, all of those stormtroopers and the local fauna that you've just fought come back. But here's the thing, you don't have to rest and reset the world. If you're happy to push on with the amount of health that you have and the number of stim packs kept in BD1's storage box, you can simply use the meditation points to redeem skill points without resting, and they also act as a save point. This means that if it turns out that you're a bit overconfident and do end up dying without having rested adequately, then you just get dropped back to the meditation point and the world actually just resets as though you had rested. But you do still need to be aware of dying, because doing so does leave an enemy glowing gold and hoarding all of your experience points since you last leveled up. You'll have to get back to and damage them in order to retrieve your XP and pick up exactly where you left off. Number 4. Metroidvania made obvious. Another of the genres that has been thrown into the melting pot of inspirations is the Metroidvania, as Jedi Fallen Order steps away from the tradition of Jedi games being quite linear action adventures. As you drop onto a new planet, you're exploring the environments more, trying to find the path forward and potentially bumping into areas that you can't access yet. To make things super simple to understand, you have a 3D holomap, with new areas to explore marked in yellow, doors and things that you have found that you can interact with marked in green, and areas that are off limits to you marked in red. It's a nice bit of visual streamlining for a game that doesn't really want to be a super heavy Metroidvania, and wants to keep things quite light and breezy. Number 5. BD1's characterful assistant. As droid companions go, the diminutive BD1 that resides on Cal's back is often more hyperactive than BB-8 doing his best ping-pong ball impression. As you explore, he's always chirping away when you've downed a new enemy type that he can scan, or there's some new lore to find, and he'll often hop off your back and stand next to a point of interest waiting for you to come over and interact and just say like, "What now, mate?" That could be a touch annoying depending on your sensibilities, but Star Wars fans will delight in hearing the utterly authentic droid bleep blooping, and if you've got subtitles on, you are in for an onomatopoeic treat. Seriously, BD1's subtitles are absolutely adorable. Number 6, falling off cliffs is absolutely fine. In your average soul-like, slipping off a cliff edge will spell your doom and send you all the way back to the last save point. It's death, after all, and you'll then have to retread your steps and get back to where you were. Not so in Jedi Fallen Order. Death during combat will obviously have that expected effect, but thankfully, given how much platforming there is to do and the quite lax health and safety regulations of the Empire, falling and similar environmental hazards will simply pop you back up on the ledge. It's a nice decision that helps to keep things accessible and not frustrating, especially when there was one cliff face walkway where Zepho's local beasties were just burrowing out of the ground to headbutt me off into the abyss. Number 7, adding lore to the universe where it needs to. Jedi Fallen Order is getting to add a healthy amount of lore and new stuff to the Star Wars canon, creating new fictional characters, new planets, new ancient races, even a few new enemies, but Respawn are also tying into some established parts of Star Wars. The main baddies in the game are the Inquisition, Force users who have turned to the dark side. Now, you won't have seen them in the films, but they aren't completely new, having appeared in the Star Wars Rebels animated series. With Jedi Fallen Order set between the prequel and the original trilogies, it makes sense to draw upon a lot of these particular story touchstones that are so well established, instead of simply creating a bunch of new stuff. But finally, something that might slightly get on the nerves of die-hard Star Wars fans, Cal has made up his own lightsaber combat form. For fans who have absorbed everything that there is to find in the Star Wars films, the lightsaber combat in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order might look a little bit off, by which I mean it doesn't conform to any of the 7 forms of lightsaber combat found in the Star Wars films. Form 3, Soresu for example, is all about deflecting blaster fire and defensive combat, as well used by Obi-Wan Kenobi when standing on a little hill. Anyway, as explained to us by Respawn's Aaron Contreras, who is the narrative lead, and I quote, "We don't really talk lightsaber styles at all, and we never define what Cal's might be. He was trained by a lightsaber master when he was a Padawan, but since then he has had a lot of years as a scrapper, so he's picked up stuff along the way." So yeah, if you're a big fan of the prequels in particular and look at the lightsaber combat in this game, you might come away from the game thinking that the Fallen Order bit in the title refers to the lost martial arts of the Jedi. As you go through the game, you pick up a lot of new and extended techniques for the lightsaber, spending your experience points in a branching character upgrade tree. Just don't expect the fighting to look like it does in earlier films, and also don't expect to be changing between, for example, defensive and offensive stances. That's all that we've got for this video, and thanks as ever for tuning in. Hopefully you found it useful, and you can also head over to thesixthaxis.com for a little bit more about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, as well as some little tidbits that we got from speaking to Respawn. Before you go though, please do make sure to subscribe, like and share, and hopefully we will see you again soon. Goodbye!